Hello, and welcome to the introduction episode to Listen to Reality. This is another open mic podcast, but the whole thing with this podcast, as said in the trailer, it's like a reality show that's played out over with 6 players. They played it over a week, and over the 6 episodes after this one, each of them will get a chance to tell you the game from their perspective. So we're gonna hear this whole game from everyone that played it. We're gonna hear it from their perspective. We're gonna hear what they did, why they did it, who they talked to, who they think they could trust, and everything like that. But for that to work, I think it would make sense for me to give some context. So that's why we have a special introduction episode for the first week for Listen to Reality to explain what the game is, how it works, and who's playing. Um, as for the next 6 episodes, starting next week Tuesday, and then every other Tuesday after that, so March 7th, then 21st, then April, and so on, that'll be them. There's going to be an episode this week, and then at the very end of the very last episode of Open Mic Podcast Season 1 will be the winner reveal. So throughout this whole podcast, you can try to piece together who you think won, and I would love to hear your theories and everything like that. As of recording this, I don't even know who won. I have yet to calculate the scores of the final round. So, I think I'm just gonna get right into it with the format. So it doesn't really have a title. It's kind of based off the challenge, like a final challenge of that, except it's just one game over a week. But overall, it's very different than a reality show you would see on TV. So yeah. Before I get to what it actually is, I do want to explain to anyone um, who doesn't know, there's a whole community out there of people that play reality shows online. They call it orgs, online reality games, and those are the people I pulled from for this. But yeah, 6 people, and there were 6 rounds in this game. Each round, you'd have a chance to earn increasing amounts of points. Most points at the end wins. Anyways, round 1 was called Greed. They could take anywhere from 1 to 11 points. Whoever took the most would get nothing, and whoever took the least, their score would double. So technically, you could say there was a maximum of 20 points, but that's like if everyone grabs 11, which wouldn't happen because that's automatically the highest number. But I said maximum of 10 points because if someone grabbed 11 and someone grabbed 10, then the person who grabbed 10 would still get 10 points. So yeah, maximum of 10 points for that one. Then round 2 is called Get the Word Across, which, if you're familiar with Open Mic Podcasts, is the name of another podcast, which is a podcast where you watch a TV show and we are going to review it, and we have to, in that review, we have to work in hidden phrases to our conversation. Catch that not tomorrow, but next Wednesday. It's going to be great. Anyways, for the challenge version on Listen to Reality, I gave each player a word or phrase that they had to secretly say to everyone else through direct messages. They also got one guess each on everyone else's phrases. They would get 1 point per person they got their message across to without that person guessing their message, and 1 point per player's message they guess. If they were able to guess everyone's message successfully and get their phrase across for everyone without it being guessed, they would get a bonus 5 points. So it was 1 point per person guessed, 1 point per person that didn't guess yours, and a bonus 5 if you got all 10. So there was a maximum of 15 points. This challenge is going to be interesting where we see different strategies, and this is really where the game starts to unfold. So round 2 is a very significant part in this game. But anyways, we're going to move on to round 3. Round 3 is based on the prisoner's dilemma, which is the idea that you have two prisoners and they can choose to either rat the other person out or they can choose to stay quiet. If one of them rats the other person out and the other person stays quiet, then the person who ratted them out would go free, and the person who got ratted out would get like 10 extra years in prison. And if they both stayed quiet, they would both get like 5 years or something like that. The idea with this challenge was each player had to decide for the other 5 players whether they would split or steal points. If you have 2 players, if they both split, they both get 2 points. If one of them steals and the other splits, the person who stole would get 4 points. If they both steal, neither of them would get any points. This results in a maximum score of 20 points, and again, this is also a significant part where the game was unfolded. I'd say round 3 was probably the climax of the game, and I can't wait to hear for you to hear what each player thinks about it. So, but round 4 was where the competition really started to heat up, because round 4 was simply ranking each other. They would individually rank the other 5 players, and then I would average up the totals, and whoever had the best ranking would get 25 points, followed by 20 for second, 15 for third, 10 for fourth, 5 for fifth, and 0 for whoever got the worst average. So that meant there was a maximum of 25 points in this round. Then round 5, I will say we went through 2 challenges that were mathematically broken and were guaranteed for everyone to get the same amount of points. But I'm going to skip to the challenge we did do, which is kind of like a reverse greed situation. Each player had 8 points that they had to give out. Whoever was given the most points would end up getting nothing. So they had to decide who they were giving points to in the second to last round of the game. And they had to decide where to place those points because they were giving points to their competition, yet they still want to have the most points. So it's a really tough situation for them to balance. And I really think it's going to be really interesting hearing the strategies that went on. Then round 6, the final round, it's a game that used to happen on Survivor a lot. It's called Touchy Subjects, where they were given 10 questions that they would answer. The answer would be one of the players. They would answer whichever player they think fits most. Then they would predict what the majority of the group said for their answers. So, for example, there were questions like, who do you think won? Who do you think got last? Which player has been lying the most? Who's the most boring? Stuff like that they would have to answer from the other players. And typically when you see this in Survivor, it's in an attempt to shake the game up. It's like mid-merge where you want to get people to distrust each other, where this, at the end, is more of assessing what you've learned and what you think of the other players. And for this one, there were 10 questions. For each one you got right, you would get 4 points, meaning that there was a maximum of 40 points. So those were the challenges. You're going to hear about each challenge in every episode. Each player will say what they did for the challenge, why they did it, and what their strategy was for that round as a whole. There's also something significant to this game where I never told them their scores. I wouldn't do results for these challenges. I wouldn't say who's winning. I never told them their scores except for one case. Each player had the right to ask their score once during the entire game. It's called their one ask. And that's something you're going to hear about from each player because they all eventually used it. Some of them used it more effectively than others. Some of them just used it on the last round because there was no other time to use it. They got to ask their score once, which could help them assess who was lying, who was winning, who they're beating, anything like that. But otherwise, all the challenges, they could discuss everything, and it's going to be really interesting. I'm really excited with how this turned out, and I can't wait for you to see what the 6 players did and how they navigated this week-long competition. And I can't wait to even for myself personally find out who won. Because something I can say, going into the last round, there was a chance for everyone still had a chance to win. Some of them significantly more than others. There's probably one person who doesn't have a chance, but mathematically, everyone had a chance to win. So, yeah. As for the players themselves, you're gonna see 6 different people, and they're each gonna tell you about how they did in the game. As of when they recorded, they have no idea whether they won or not. All they know is what they did and what they were told. So the players you're gonna hear from, just in order I have them on a list here. This probably won't be the order of the episodes, but there's Ray, Patrick, Kane, Noah, Sloth, and Tim. These are the 6 people that competed in Listen to Reality, and you'll get to hear one episode from each of them. Starting next Tuesday for the next 6 episodes, you'll hear one time from each guest. And up to you on whether you just want to listen along, whether you want to see if you can figure out the scores, whether you want to see if you can figure out who won. But yeah, I hope you enjoy. This is one of the podcasts I'm most excited for. This episode itself probably won't be the most exciting, but I do think the context is going to be really helpful in just knowing how the game works, because I give a short description in each of the interviews, but this is the full detail of how the game works, who's playing the game, and what the challenges are. So, with that being said, thank you for listening to Listen to Reality. Listen to Reality is owned and produced by Open Mic Podcasts. If you like Listen to Reality and want to see more episodes, or if you like Listen to Reality and want to see what else we have to offer, subscribe to Open Mic Podcasts on YouTube, follow Open Mic Podcasts on Spotify and Instagram. Come back next Tuesday for the first episode of Listen to Reality, but come back tomorrow for the first episode of the Totally Serious Debate, the podcast where we bring absurd topics to formal debates.